Good evening. Welcome to the Selectmen's meeting for April 8th, 2014. Roll call, please.
Colin McNabb, present.
Sue Licio, present. I'd just like to make an announcement that this meeting is being tape recorded. 1.3, Chairman's additions or deletions. We are adding number 6, which is an executive session. We'll read that when we get there. Appointments and hearings, we've got a couple minutes, so can we skip down? 3.1, review referral notice from the Zoning Board of Appeals regarding a special permit for Kevin Smith on behalf of George and Hugh McGovern at West Meadow Road, Assessors Map 4, Block 22, Lot 0. Typically, we just kind of look them over. It's like an FYI from them. They have a hearing coming up.
They do, yes.
Okay. Did you have any questions?
Nope.
And I'm all set, so
Okay,
just thank you for the referral.
okay.
3.2, review and approve renewal of junk dealer's license for MJS Metals.
The junk dealer statute puts the renewals at this time of year, unlike most of our other licenses which run on a calendar year schedule. So this one comes up in April. MJS is the only junk dealer license that the board issues, and they're asking for their renewal for the next year.
Any questions, Colin?
Nope.
I just have one, and that was, do they come under any rules and regulations in reference to cash for gold kinds of things?
They, as a junk dealer or as a secondhand purveyor, they certainly could. They take in metals. I don't know that they take in gold or silver or other precious metals like that, but there's nothing in the zoning or in their license that would prohibit them from doing so. They're a little different from your run-of-the-mill jeweler who would typically...
Or pawn shop.
Or pawn shop, that would trade in gold and jewelry and similar things. MJS specifically, to my knowledge, does not trade in that kind of stuff.
I guess my only reason for bringing that up is I want to be sure that if they should trade in that any cooperation with the police department follows the same rules for other people who would do the same thing.
Yes.
Just to make sure we're not helping out anyone that we shouldn't be helping out.
Yes.
Okay? So if you could check into that and just let us know at some point, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Take a motion.
Please.
I move to approve the renewal of the junk dealer's license for MJS Metals.
I'll second that. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
On the bottom lines there.
Can you get one more in? Not that one. Not that one. Not that one.
3.8 might be a good one.
Okay. 3.8, reminder of important upcoming events. There is a candidates night. I believe that's hosted by Neshoba Publications.
Right.
It will be here at the Great Hall, April 16th. That's a Wednesday at 7 p.m. The town election is April 28th. I believe that's a Monday, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Our annual town meeting is scheduled for May 6th at 7 PM here in the Great Hall. And Earth Day is April 26th on the Common.
Correct.
From 10 to 3, there will be a celebration.
Be there or be square.
You did that.
Can I ask a question about candidates night? Will that be filmed as it's happening?
It usually
Live.
is. I don't know if they've arranged for that. Hartley, would you know?
I think it will be live. I can't confirm that. I'll ask Steve Clear about that, but I believe it will be live.
Okay.
And it'll be recorded?
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
7:05.
Okay, 7:05. Review notice of intent to sell land located on Barker Hill Road, shown as Assessor's Map 21, Block 1, Lot 2, which land is classified under Mass General Law, Chapter 61B, and consider assigning the right of first to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation. Andy, want to start us off?
Well, first of all, I'd correct that it should be the right of first refusal, not just the right of first.
Okay, refusal.
Sorry about that.
That was a demotion, so we're all right.
Could be a demerit, though. Chapter 61, Chapter 61A and Chapter 61B are the so-called land classification statutes in Massachusetts. What they do, and they operate generally the same way, but there are slight differences. What the three statutes do is allow landowners to set land aside and so-called classify the land, and they pay a reduced tax on the land because it is open space and it is being protected as open space. And in return for that reduction in property taxes, the town gets the right of first refusal at the time that the land is either sold or converted to some other use. It no longer becomes open space. Chapter 61B is the recreational land statute, and this land has been under Chapter 61B for better than 20 years, I believe. The owners have a purchase and sale agreement with a buyer, and that triggers the notification to the town, and the town has 120 days to exercise its right to either purchase the land not at the fair market value, not purchase the land, and allow the private transaction to go ahead, or assign the right to either a nonprofit open space organization or the Commonwealth.
So that's assigning the right for someone to purchase it.
To purchase at the agreed upon price, at the arm's length price. The land is surrounded or bounded on 2.5 sides, 2 sides by state forest land, and the state has expressed an interest. Christine Barry from Division of Conservation and Recreation is here tonight. DCR is interested in receiving the assignment of the land. We don't really have the wherewithal to purchase it, and for us it would be a piece of town land surrounded mostly by conservation land, so it makes sense in many respects to consider assigning the right. Leslie Gabrilska's been working on this since this came to our attention in January, I think it was originally. And she may have a few comments to make if the board is okay with that.
Leslie?
Yes, I have been working on it since January, and I contacted Christine because I knew we didn't have the wherewithal to purchase it, but I walked the property with an open mind, thinking, you know, I didn't know what I was going to expect, but I wasn't expecting anything unusual, just your normal wooded lot. And then when I went out there, I was just flabbergasted. It was just gorgeous. I think I called Andy and I called the commission from my cell phone saying, you know, like, you all have to look at it. The stone walls, again, I mentioned last time, the stone walls are incredible. They're just beautifully masoned, engineered stone walls. They cut through the property. There is a view at the top. It wasn't the greatest day, but when I went up, you can see to the east, you know, who knows how far on a clear day. Be a great spot for, you know, sitting up there, having a picnic, whatever. Wildlife galore. And when I went out on one snowy day, well, it may show on this one, there are a lot of trails through there that people have already been using because it's Chapter 51 recreation. And I spoke with an abutter who said the trail goes like through these massive stone walls all the way to the quarry. So you can just go straight through. It's about an hour round trip. But there were signs of people already walking out there or cross-country skiing or something. So I just felt like, since I've been here, we have never exercised our right of first refusal. But this one, because of the fact that it's core habitat and critical natural landscape, meaning the Commonwealth is working to save large parcels of land, you know, to maintain the biological integrity of wildlife. So there's large gene pools so they can maintain corridors to, you know, to migrate back and forth and keep healthy wildlife. And it should be open to the public. I just couldn't sort of bear the thought of it being just one homeowner. And to put a house up there would open up that sort of buffer from the interior forest. So it's just a beautiful piece, and when it's gone, it's gone. So I just felt strongly that and the commission voted at their last meeting. I think I gave you a memo, came at the last minute. But they voted at their last meeting to strongly endorse protecting it. So DCR, fortunately, went out and looked at it, if you want to talk about it, and they loved it too.
I think Leslie covered it very well. You know, speaking from the Commonwealth's perspective, we received scores of Chapter 61 notices throughout the year as abutters, and we also receive those notices as a matter of course, and rarely, extremely rarely, do we ever work with a town to ask them to assign their right of first refusal to us. Whereas, you know, the map is over here.
Yeah.
Barker Hill Road bisects Townsend State Forest, and trying to connect the two sides of the state forest where it's appropriate
On the chairs.
and makes sense is something that our agency is interested in. Certainly there's already development along Barker Hill Road, but where this property, you know, the state forest is directly on the other side. We've also, I think it was, how many years ago, Leslie, maybe 3 years ago, we acquired the Valley Realty property, which is just a little bit further south on Barker Hill Road. So again, you know, any opportunity we feel that it makes sense where we can bridge that gap between the two sections of the state forest makes sense. And just echoing what Leslie mentioned about the natural resource value being so high, we just really felt like, you know, right away as soon as the notice, I think the notice came across my desk, you know, within days, you know, we were in touch. And it just jumped out as making a lot of sense for us to try to work to have that property be included in Townsend State Forest.
So Andy, if the state were to purchase this, that piece of property then would fall into, I mean, we don't get tax money for it. We
Correct.
get pilot money, is that
Yes.
correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Payment in
Absolutely.
lieu of taxes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But it has been chapter land since 1983. So that's 30 years of it being, I think, they are taxed currently at 25% of the assessed value. So we do get somewhat of, you know, taxes, but not a lot, because the town supports protecting open space and giving it that tax incentive.
Is there water there too?
Yep, there's a stream. It's probably intermittent, but there is a wetland down there and a stream that comes down and works its way down, all the way down Barker Hill, down that side.
Would imagine you have some vernal pools then.
Probably, and now's the time.
One of the pictures looks like vernal pools, I would suspect, and I've heard that there are numerous vernal pools up in that area.
Exciting.
Yeah,
Well,
and you can see it does serve as a migratory corridor, you know, down the road. We can connect these instead of houses down, all the way down between these two large sections. So, and this is the area where it's just a great view, and all this is open. You come down and look out at the Rossback Field this way, and It just has a lot of a different sort of feel to it.
I will add, when I went out there, looking at the map, I think it, clearly looks like a puzzle piece to fit into the state forest, but I agree with you. I went out there sort of thinking, oh, this is gonna just be some New England woodland,
Nice
but when you go out there and you do see the vistas and the stone walls and the forest cover, it's a very special property.
It's unique, yeah.
I'd heard years ago there was an eagle nest up in that area. I was never had the time to confirm
Go
it.
for a walk with me?
Let's go. That's the time of year.
There are bobcat tracks, I'm sure that there are bear, we have that everywhere now.
Well, we have bears in
Lots of-
Timberley
Yeah.
Park, so.
That's, okay, well, yeah. Other places we have bear and bobcat and moose and deer, so we just need to keep that healthy population.
There's a book that not when I first came to town, but in 1995, there was a reading at the library. I think it was Lana Thien.
Whoa, I knew that was gonna happen.
Yes.
That's all right, we saw it.
Okay. We can picture now. Yeah.
The Friends of the Library had Melissa Green, who grew up in that house. That's been a family house since the early 1800s. The family property, I should say. The house is now owned by someone else. And she did a reading at the library which really moved me. And the poems in this book, I've included a few that I brought in today on your packet, are just, some of them are so heartbreakingly beautiful on the wildlife and the wild areas. And the view from up there, she talks about going with her father when she was very young, is you can see the whole downtown area, you can see the Squanicook, and you can see over to the quarry. It's quite stupendous. And that got me out into the woods in Townsend, got me on the Conservation Commission for far too many years.
Not nearly enough.
Don't say that.
More than 15
You're a
years,
lifer.
but it really impacted me at that time. And I refer to these poems often. They're beautiful, and it's a beautiful property.
So I know it's a tough decision.
Yes, your name, please?
I'm Emily Norton. I started Friends of Willowbrook. And also there is a group now, I believe they call themselves Montechusett Regional Trails Group or something like that. And their major goal is to connect trails that are in separate parcels. And if the state got that piece, then the trails that are on the west side of Townsend State Forest could then be much more easily connected to the trails on the east side. I know that there's an active horseback riding group that uses the trails on both sides. And to go any length of Barker Hill Road on a horse is really dangerous because it's a narrow road and cars go very fast on that road. So that's my first point. Second point is that the chance to protect this parcel comes one time only. And if we don't use that one chance, it's gone forever. And then the third point that I was thinking about was if we think into the future, as Massachusetts becomes more and more developed, Townsend becomes more and more of a treasure for the Commonwealth because of its beautiful natural spaces. So I think it's a great idea to protect that land.
Anyone else? Follow?
I'm Brian Moore. I'm actually the gentleman that put an offer into this property. And I have some more elaborate plans showing, yeah, it is a beautiful spot. Could tap some of these out, if you don't mind.
Thanks.
Anybody else like a copy of this? Yeah, a couple more left. Let me hold on to this one now. I had to spend quite a bit of money on engineering to see what we could do with this property, to see whether, we could develop it. And we can actually get 2 legal lots on this property. My interest was up in the corner, the higher elevation that she was talking, up here. And then I would have to probably sell off the other half just for the added expense when building a house so far off the road. You're looking at like a 900-foot driveway. And then parcel A I was gonna cut off and give to the town. And then once I noticed that this could work, I put a proposal in. Now that I realize that conservation is so interested in this, what I could propose is parcel A in lot 1, which is over 12 acres out of the 20 acres, I'd be willing to sell that off for say $50,000 and retain 7 acres for $85,000. So now the state doesn't have to pay the $135, only the $50. Now this lot that I would propose selling off, there are trails to the west, almost right at the border here. Coming down from the west, there are trails, and across the road on the east side, there are trails almost across the driveway. So having this parcel A in lot 1 being 12 acres, you'd be able to connect the 2 trails. And also, this lower section, which borders the hayfield, is nice and flat. If DCR wanted to get a parking lot in here or something, it'd be a beautiful spot in here. So my proposal, if we could possibly share, I would take the burden of the cost of the property for a smaller amount. I think we're looking at, this is a little inaccurate. The formal letter tells it a little better. I think it's like 7 acres. If DCU wanted to keep these 2 buildable lots, whether they built on or not, they'd have to maintain, say, the first 50 feet, they'd have to keep the way it is. Then the rest of it, it's up for discussion still as far as moving lot lines. So this is a larger lot. This is 20 acres. This just focuses on a smaller portion. This is a large group here. To the south is where there's wetlands. I didn't notice any pools over there. Nothing was documented because all the wetland had to be noted. But the other beautiful trails through there. In fact, the trails are actually noted. You can actually hold on to this larger copy if you'd like. But the trails are actually noted on here.
Yeah.
So I was just hoping you'd take it into consideration.
What's the DCR have to say about that?
Well, I very much appreciate, you thinking with that conservation eye. I think it's something that our agency would not be interested in, unfortunately. And I certainly understand you spent a lot of money on engineering and such, but I think by dividing the property in such a way, I think it would really lose a lot of its conservation integrity. Having it be bisected with the house set back, on part of the property that probably has some of the best views, which I also understand, that's why you want to have your house there, and, that's why we,
like you say.
yes, also why we want to, allow the public to go out there and enjoy that view. I think, some of the stone walls, I just don't think it would, I think it would compromise the property too much for us to be interested in that.
Colin, anything?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay, where I'm coming from, heaven forbid I shouldn't give my opinion. Wouldn't want to disappoint anyone. Looking at it as this land, as someone said, let's say 25% of the taxes.
Yep.
So 75% savings on taxes over
30 years.
30 years. Was a good thing, I think, for the, for the current landowners. I am admittedly biased toward conservation efforts. I'll fight right along with everyone else to maintain as much natural locations as we could possibly have. As a little girl in the Girl Scouts, I had this dream, and I said, if I ever were rich enough, I would buy a huge piece of land and leave it so that people could picnic and walk through it and just enjoy it and never let anybody touch it. Well, I'm not rich, but...
Buy some lottery tickets together. Let's buy some lottery tickets.
Yeah,
together. Maybe we'll
I'm
get
not
there.
rich, and I've never been able to do that, so this is as close as I could get. And that's truly how I feel. It's one of the reasons I love the community. Because I know that I can talk to my grandchildren about the bear that just came in and destroyed all of my feeders because I didn't take them in last night, that kind of thing.
It's pretty unique.
Yeah, it
Think that,
is. It is. It's great. It's wonderful. So that's where I'm coming from. Where are you coming from, Colin?
I have no idea. Just kidding. I understand the cost involved with engineering and that sort of thing, but my opinion is similar to Sue's, that this opportunity does not come around very often, and it is a beautiful piece of property, and I think that it should be enjoyed by the people of Townsend and the surrounding communities.
Forever and always. I would ask that the DCR put in a good word at the state on how much we rely on Pilot.
Yes.
And we actually
I bet you do.
we actually had a discussion that we probably should have at some point about the big difference between our town and towns like ours, this side of 495, is having a different kind of tax base structure, for sure, compared to the way that sometimes those on the Boston side of 495 look at things. And we'd love to talk about how we could do that differently for this kind of a community. So please keep us in mind, and maybe we could have a conversation about that soon.
Absolutely.
Yes.
My understanding, I didn't see it on that map right there, because the one I looked at in the plan, in the land office was, it showed a partial of this section. If it's the same section, I can't tell because it's not divided the same way their map was. That there's a portion in it that's already owned by somebody, which is the one I believe this gentleman wants to purchase, that's already owned. Is that true, or is that not true anymore?
Well, there's a small 2.25 acre lot
No, it
separated
was a
off.
1712, it's like I looked, I
Oh,
saw the paperwork on
Well,
it,
it's
yeah.
owned by Mr. Green. And
No, there was a purchase
There's
and
a
sale.
purchase and sale, yes.
Yeah, but that hasn't been purchased yet, I believe
Well,
that's him here.
No, that's the
But
process.
somebody already owns that land, partial of that land, because it was purchased in 2006.
That's
So it's been owned, then that gentleman's been paying partial taxes because it's under the 61B.
That's right, and because
All right, is that gonna incorporate him where he loses his land now, or is that part of this whole?
Well, this only has to do with the one parcel,
Yeah,
it's,
but which parcel is it
The
referring
large
to?
one?
Because that doesn't show. And the way it's documented here, it's the actual one that that gentleman owns.
It's this plan, if that
Mm-hmm.
helps, the large,
I'm not sure what this is what I saw, but.
it's this large piece.
Yeah, but it's in between two already state forest
The
properties.
state forest is
It's
here
in the
and
middle,
here.
like, it's like a,
No, this is state forest and that's a state forest.
oh, that's what I mean.
Is
state
this the
forest, okay.
parcel?
And that's where there's a house. And that's,
Well, I don't know about the house, I didn't see that on the map, on the
but
thing.
this is the piece that we're talking about.
Oh, you're actually talking about that one particular piece?
Yes.
So,
Oh,
Mr.
okay.
Dion, what's your
Now, is
point?
that gonna,
Yeah.
does that mean you have to buy it from the gentleman that owns it now?
That's correct.
That's
Oh,
correct.
okay, that wasn't brought up, I didn't hear anything said.
No,
I didn't hear that said.
the thing is that because they've gotten a break on the taxes
Mm-hmm.
for all of those years, one of the stipulations in order to get that break is
Mm-hmm.
if you ever decide you want to sell it, we have first right.
Okay, I
to
can
buy it.
understand that portion, yeah.
So that's, and we're saying we don't have the money to buy it, but if the state would like to buy it, we'll.
The same price that the
Yes.
gentleman is offering?
Yes.
135?
Yes. Okay,
Okay,
Colin?
sorry.
I move that we assign the right of first refusal to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation on, should I say
Assessor's map.
on Assessor's Map 21, Block 1, Lot 2.
Yeah.
And I will second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And there's a second motion that needs to be made, and that has to do, we talked about it a little bit at the
Do you
last
have it
meeting.
written for us?
I do, you read it last week. in fact.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
the one you read, but you
That was the
didn't
one
need
I
to.
read that I didn't need to read.
So we'll let you read it
Do
again
we
this
need
week.
to sign?
Yes,
Where?
just you on the top of page 2, and I'll notarize it.
Okay. Would you like to read it this time?
You're the one who has to sign it, so
Okay.
I feel like I should.
Yeah, you can't read it.
I
Okay.
feel like we should sign it.
This is a 120-day waiver in reference to land in Townsend. I, Sue Licio, Chair of the Townsend Select Board, in response to a request by the Department of Conservation and Recreation that the board waive the 120-day notice period required in the regulations for acquiring land for conservation, the Commonwealth's natural resources, in particular 301 CMR 51.081B, in connection with a proposed acquisition by the department in the town of Townsend. Hereby confirm that the board agrees to waive the 120-day notice period required by said section 5108, and that the acquisition by the Department of Conservation and Recreation of an approximately 19-acre parcel of land located on Barker Hill Road in the town of Townsend, as shown on a locus map marked Exhibit A appended hereto, may occur within a shorter time period than provided in said section 5108. Would you like this in the form of a motion? It's
It could be so moved.
So moved.
Well, actually, you read it, that's really
I
all you
read
need
it,
to
I
do.
moved it, you need to second it.
Second it.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The deed is done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Leslie.
so much.
Okay.
And I'll be calling you to go for that walk.
Okay, go, let's do it.
Okay?
I'll be calling you in May and June to come out with us to swap.
Okay.
We're on 3.3.
Thank you.
I'll leave the mess here.
Yeah, we'll clean it
Sure.
up.
Sorry.
Okay, we're on 3.3, review and approve amendments to meeting hall policy. Andy?
As you'll recall, a few meetings ago, the board, at the request of the Townsend Meeting Hall Committee, voted to dissolve the committee because of the lack of steady revenue coming in to support staffing for the meeting hall. So in the intervening couple of weeks, I've worked with Stacy Shuttler and indirectly with the library trustees and Council on Aging to revise the meeting hall policy to reflect the current reality of what will be happening there. The meeting hall policy previously had been sort of focused around the meeting hall committee. Now, without the committee, we needed to revise that to take the committee out of it, and also to amend the parts of the policy that dealt with reservations and bookings and things like that. So it's a little bit stripped down from where it was. You had asked me yesterday, Sue, what's gone or what's different. And I think maybe the easiest thing for me to do is hand out the old policy or the existing policy, and then I can walk you through the primary changes of what has gone on. So if you go to the second page, the second paragraph that starts, town staff or volunteers assigned jointly, that paragraph goes away because we're not, just to remind you of what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, the facility for the most part will not be available outside of normal library or senior center hours. People can use it during regular hours, subject to availability, but it's primarily going to be available now for the library and for the Council on Aging. So that second paragraph goes away. On the next page, the regulations and procedures section, that whole subsection 1 request procedure, that all goes away. And then in conditions of use, most of that remains with the exception of section E, musical performances. That will go away as well. Pretty much everything else stays, but now the way the policy will read is that unless it's a library or senior center function or some function that would occur during open hours, the meeting hall is no longer going to be available for the public use.
Unless it's what?
Well, during regular hours.
Okay, so let's say that someone wanted to use the hall between 2 and 4 on a Thursday afternoon, and it was available.
Yep.
That would be
okay.
Okay.
Yep.
And they would go to whom to schedule that?
At this point, they go either to the senior center or to the library.
Okay.
And schedule it there, reserve it there.
So they're the ones
maintaining
that
the
are
calendar.
holding the calendar?
Yes.
Okay, and they coordinate with each other?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So if anybody is interested during regular, it's really library hours, because the library, I think, is open more than the senior center, isn't it?
The library, yeah, a little bit more, because they're open longer days, 10 to 9 for several days of the week.
So basically, it's not available in the evenings unless it's an evening that the library is open?
Yeah, the biggie is that it's not available, for instance, on Saturday evenings, or for the most part on Sundays.
Okay.
So, we expect that we'll get occasional requests from groups, and if we can accommodate them, we'll do so, similar to what we do with the Great Hall. We rent that out maybe a half a dozen times a year for various things. So if we can manage it, we'll certainly do so. We'd like to, I don't like to make promises that I don't know that we can keep. We'd like to be able to make this available in the future. We wish that we could keep it available now. We just don't have the capacity to keep it going. So it takes a surprising amount of work to book events over there.
Right, well, if somebody's just kind of shopping for a place to have a shower or something like that, you're one of possibly 5 different venues that someone could use,
Yeah.
then I can see it taking a little bit of time to answer questions, show people around, and all that, and they may not even be interested in finalizing it.
That's right.
So,
And that's
you know,
what
I
we
can
were finding.
understand
There was a
that,
lot
yeah.
of effort spent on
Yeah,
on things
I
that
remember
didn't come to
Stacy
fruition.
saying that too, so, okay. So,
So if the board is in agreement, it would be a motion to adopt the policy. It would go into effect.
as amended?
As amended, and will go into effect after we post it with the clerk.
I move to approve the amendments to the meeting hall policy and, or the new,
to accept it.
to accept it.
And I will second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 3.4, review and discuss draft intermunicipal agreement for shared town treasurer services with Ashby.
This is similar to what we did last year with the town of Dunstable for town accountant services. If you recall, at that time, Kim Fales was working here 20 hours a week and held a separate position in Ashby at 10 hours a week. We entered into an intermunicipal agreement with Dunstable. There were benefits to both communities. There were benefits to Kim. The biggest benefit, really from our perspective, was that it made the position more attractive, gave her more hours, less uncertainty, I guess you could say, having really just one employer. And it's worked well for both communities over the past year. After Kathy Rosbach retired as the collector and treasurer, we hired initially Kate Stacy as the treasurer on an interim basis. She's the treasurer in Ashby and has been for a number of years, and it's working out well. She's an experienced treasurer, and the town administrator in Ashby approached me recently and said, would it make sense to have a shared agreement where, it would be sort of the opposite of what we do with Dunstable, where Kim is an employee here and Dunstable pays to offset a portion of the cost. With what Ashby has proposed to us, Kate would remain an employee of Ashby, and we would supplement. We would be essentially billed for a portion of her time and benefits. So
How much time?
it would be about 20 hours in each community.
Is that sufficient?
We think so, and I'm going to talk about the staffing in the treasurer collector's office when I talk about the budget. And so it may be prudent not to take a final vote on this tonight, to sort of let all the pieces shake out. But we think it is, but there may be some other changes that we need to make in that office to make sure that we've got adequate coverage to do everything that we need to do, not that we're trying to do.
In the treasurer's office or the tax collector?
In both the treasurer and the collector, because there's such overlap and there's shared staffing down there already.
Okay.
So, but I wanted to bring it to the board. If you were okay with it, we'd keep moving forward. If there was concern about it or objection to it, then we could let Ashby know that, and we could each begin to formulate our own.
It's reasonable.
It's reasonable to keep the discussion going.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Let's see how everything else pans out too, though.
Okay.
I want to make sure that that's sufficient for the hours. We're still working, I think you're still working on the job description for the collector's side.
Yes.
So that, that will help to delineate the responsibilities.
Right.
And therefore figure out better what the needs are in terms of hours, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, let Ashby know, thank you, and we'll continue the discussions.
Okay, great.
If you're okay with that, Colin?
I'm fine with that.
Okay. 3.5, discuss implementation of a lockbox service to streamline collections.
One of the recommendations that came out of the Department of Revenue Management Review a few years ago in 2011 was that the town implement a lockbox service. And what a lockbox service is it's an agreement with a bank, and instead of people paying their property taxes, putting their property taxes and excise taxes in an envelope and sending it to town hall, they would send it in an envelope that we provide, and it would go to the lockbox service, which is an off-site bank processing center. That processing center is all fully automated, opens up the envelopes, takes out the stubs, takes out the checks, compares them. If they match, if the amount on the check matches what's on the stub, it all gets scanned in, tabulated, and gets sent back to us and booked automatically.
Booked to our account?
To our accounts, yeah. And automatically populates the field so that Lizio's account is now shown as being paid, payment received on such and such a day. The benefit, a couple of benefits of it. The biggest is that it reduces some of the foot traffic into the building and frees up staff to work on other things. And as we've talked about over the last couple of years, there are a number of areas that we need to devote more attention to, things like tax title and some of the other processes, reconciliations and things like that. During collection periods, the 4 times a year that property tax collections come in, and in March, which is the heaviest of the excise collection periods, it's really kind of crazy down there in the collector's office. And Rebecca, who's was experienced when she came here and does a great job for us, really can't do anything other than just take in the collections that come in that day, and it gets hard for her to take them in and process them and input the data. So this would help in that it would automate a lot of the process off-site. Again, cuts down on the foot traffic, cuts down on the counter traffic, and the estimate is that in the first year would see about a 25% reduction. 25% of the property tax bills would go, and that's almost 16,000 property tax bills a year that go out. And so a quarter of those, maybe 4,000, would go through the processing center, and the remainder would come in however they come in now, e-pay, by check, by people coming in and paying. So, and then over time it will build, and we'll see even greater than that initial 25%. The town of Pepperell went to a lockbox service a couple of years ago, initially with excise tax. They've now gone there for property tax. They've found it to be a great savings in time. There are a couple of ways to do it. You can do it so that you have all the checks come in to town hall, but then they still have to be processed here, and so there are extra steps. And for a smaller community, it works to do it that way. For us, we don't think of ourselves as a large community, but we're big enough, and for the staffing we've got, it's a lot to try to do it internally. So it would be an off-site center. Most of them are in. There are a couple of banks that do this. Eastern Bank, Century Bank are two of the ones that we've been talking to, and their processing centers are down closer to Boston, Medford, Reading, Melrose, Stoneham, that area.
That's probably similar to some of the P.O. boxes, if you will, that you get for your utility bills or whatever.
Yes.
They're really not going to the utility company. They're
That's
going
correct.
to a lockbox for.
That's correct.
That they contract with.
Yeah.
I can really see an advantage to that from the standpoint of, if you think about it for property taxes, 4 times a year is a big bubble in terms of foot traffic that would come in and need to be handled.
Yes.
So that's like a nightmare for staffing, because it says, during this time period,
Everything else.
You got to drop everything else.
Yeah, everything
But
else gets
those other
dropped.
things need to be done, so you end up being behind on those other things. So from a management perspective, that makes an awful lot of sense, at least to me. Question about the envelope. Is the envelope then going to go into the, with the bill?
Yes, and one of the changes that we would see, currently we mail out twice a year, and we send 2 stubs each time. We would go to a quarterly mailing, sending an envelope each time. It's a little bit more of a cost on our end, both the postage cost, providing the envelopes, et cetera.
Do you know what kind of organization it takes me to hold on to the second stub of that bill for 3 months and not lose it?
Yeah. And
I mean, I have a system and it's working
Yeah.
so far, but
And it's a challenge that a lot of people have. And
Yeah.
one of the other things that happens before the due date is the people coming in or the people calling and saying, I lost my second
Can you give
quarter
me a
or my
copy?"
fourth quarter bill. Can you print me a new one? And, sometimes they stand there and write the check, or they leave and then they come back. So you're increasing the foot traffic in that regard too. So there would be some additional cost associated with it. Overall, we think that it is a much more efficient process.
okay, so an envelope would be included with the bill, with this box number,
Yes,
and all people would have to do is put the check in, put the stub in, and then put a stamp on
put
the
a
letter.
stamp on it and pop it in the mail.
Okay. Since we're talking about a lockbox, is that not also the suggestion that the DOR made, and I believe maybe even the auditors, for the water department receipts to come in that fashion too? Or to have them processed through the collector's office?
It was to transfer all of the water collections to town hall, to the town collector, which was one of the reasons that when we filed the special legislation last year, we changed the position from tax collector to town collector.
Yeah.
That allows that position to collect
Other
everything
receipts,
other than
right.
just property and excise taxes. So certainly a lockbox would help on the water end. The auditors have raised concern, as you recall, about the segregation of duties over there, and that you have the same department, and it's not just that it's the same people, but it's the same department that commits the bills, collects the bills, and abates the bills. We kind of view it that way in town hall, but it's really all segregated. The assessors commit the bills, the collector collects, and the treasurer takes the money from the collector and handles all the investments and things like that.
Which is why the auditors didn't call that out as an issue.
Correct.
Because it's not an issue
That's
for
correct.
the town.
That's correct. So the auditors have said, in the ideal scenario, the collections for the water department should come to town hall. The Department of Revenue said that in 2011 as well. A lockbox would help that process.
But it would still end up having to be the responsibility of being processed through the collector's office.
Well, Paul Rayfuse, the water superintendent, did get a price on a lockbox service for the water bills. So it would keep everything within the water department. The town collector would have no role still, but it would get some of the money, some of the collections right out of their hands and clean things up to some degree.
Okay, so the issue wasn't, I was trying to remember, the issue wasn't just a lockbox. The issue was the same people handling outgoing and incoming.
Correct. Yeah.
Versus the practice that's established in the town.
Right, the
for other
complete segregation,
collections.
yeah.
Okay. All right, well,
So Paul has looked at that. Paul would be willing to go either lockbox or or send collections over here. But the commission has not signed off on that yet, so. So that, right now, there doesn't seem to be any progress on that.
okay. I suppose we need to talk with them at some point, since it has to do with the audit letter, but that's getting
Yeah.
into another subject. Maybe you could see what we can do about putting that on a future agenda.
I do expect the auditors to come in. They've tentatively committed to the next regular meeting, the 22nd.
Okay.
So that's, certainly that's something that I would expect that they're going to bring up, because there's been no progress on that.
Okay.
There's been a lot of progress downstairs, so we'll get some good news on that front.
Okay, so getting back to this one then.
So I'm not looking for the board to sign off on anything tonight, but it is, again, it's another piece of the budget puzzle that will be discussed in a few minutes as we
Makes sense to me.
talk about
Sounds groovy.
Groovy.
Groovy, huh?
Awesome.
Sue has a question.
Yes.
How much does this type of service cost? Do you have any ballpark number, or?
We think that the lockbox service itself will be under $7,000 a year. And again, there'll be some additional postage and some additional costs for envelopes, but it's, in terms of the time saved, I was thinking about it today and trying to come up with a good analogy. It's not quite like going from a typewriter to a word processor, but it's kind of along those lines. You can keep typing forever, and if you're really good at correcting, you can correct, and it's not that noticeable. But when you take advantage of the automation, it really pays off.
Well, I'm thinking too, if you had to isolate just that part of the job, downstairs, and everybody were coming in, or that person were having to process all of that foot traffic coming in, and you were paying them just to do that, it would probably cost you more than that. So.
Yeah. And we're a funny-sized community, and I mentioned it before. We don't think of ourselves as. I'll pay for that one.
Yeah.
But you get into the 20 to 30,000 population, and your collector office is going to be bigger anyways, and so you're going to have more people. Here, if the person at the desk at the counter is out, we're in a world of hurt. If you're in a community of say 30,000 people, and you've got 3 people at the collections counter and 1 is out, well, 2 people are going to have a really long day, but they can get it done. It becomes much more challenging here, so it does make a lot of sense, and where the Department of Revenue and the auditors have both mentioned it as a potential time saver and a way to automate it, it makes sense for us to look at it.
Okay. Let us know what happens there. 3.6, review and discuss town administrator's recommended FY15 operating budget.
Okay.
Did you change this from the last?
I put a new memo in front of you tonight. It sort of highlights some of the changes. The spreadsheet itself, yes. Yeah, the one that says 3.6 at the top. No. In the stuff that I put in front of you tonight. Keep going.
Okay, I'm looking after I organized all of my other stuff. That's not it. It's in here.
Shouldn't be.
No, it's not. Is it here?
I'm all set.
Hold on. Just.
I'm gonna touch all your stuff.
Stapling I did.
That's why I spread out.
We don't have a big enough. It's not here, Andy.
What did you do with it?
He took it. Thank you.
Sorry.
You loved that, didn't you?
So you have two memos that look somewhat the same. One is dated today, one is dated March 13th. Don't lose the March 13th, because that has the budget spreadsheet attached to it. So I haven't changed the budget spreadsheet, but I'll talk about some of the stuff that's going to be changing or that we're looking at as we go along. I won't read this to you, but I'll go through it and touch the, unless you want me to.
No, thank you. Just highlights.
I can give you a minute to think about it. So the we typically, historically, have taken all the time available to work on our budget, and I know that I've done that in the 4 budgets that I've prepared. As I understand it, Greg did that while he was here. It would be nice to sit back on April 1st and say, well, budget's done, and not think about it until town meeting. But there are so many parts to it and so many moving pieces that we really feel the need to take advantage of all the time that's available to put this thing together with as close to perfect as we can get it. So we've got town meeting 4 weeks from tonight. We're going to continue to tweak some things. I talked about revenues at the last meeting. Again, we're low on revenues in comparison to where we were a few years ago. State aid has not come back yet. We're back at the level that we were at in fiscal 2006. We initially had projected a level fund on state aid. The House and Senate came back, gave a little bit extra in local aid for cities and towns. That brought us up another $31,500. As I say in the memo, it's not as much as we would have hoped, but we're not gonna look a gift horse in the mouth. I also talked at a prior meeting about how we had to modify our approach and look at our revenues a little bit differently as a result of the school assessments that we received. School assessments by themselves ate up more than 100% of the Prop 2.5 increase that we get every year, and so in order to avoid massive cuts to non-school services, townside services, we went back to our revenues. We got a little bit more aggressive on our local receipts, and did a few things that we haven't done in the past, partially because we didn't need to, but it makes sense at this point. So we're a little bit more aggressive on our local receipts. We're seeing a good trend in motor vehicle excise. We think that's going to continue. Beth Ann Scheid, the collector, sees a continuing increase in that. So we're confident in that. She's actually projecting higher than we're projecting. So we feel safe in that. We're also using a little bit of free cash this year to pay some debt, which is a little different from what we've done in the past. We've got a ladder truck that I forget when we first purchased it. It was part of a refunding of debt that we did in 2010, shortly after I came here. There are 4 years left on the term of that bond. It will run out in fiscal 18. That will be the last year. So we're proposing to for the 15 and for the years following to pay the debt service out of free cash or stabilization for that ladder truck. So that saves us $73,000 out of the tax levy that we don't need to raise and appropriate. On the expenditure side, I've got a little bit more to talk about. Wages, as I've mentioned in the past, for the most part, are going up 2.5%. That is the equivalent of a step, although we're not giving a step this year per se. We've accelerated the schedule. So if you're on a step 2 now, you're going to stay on step 2, but step 2 is 2.5% higher than it is in fiscal 14. So it's to try to keep the compensation plan up with the natural inflation in the economy.
That's probably about what people in business are getting, if they're lucky to.
Yeah. And like people in the private sector, our employees went several years with nothing. We've been able to do some catch up with them and honor the commitment that we made to them a couple of years ago. Most of the collective bargaining units, the unions, are at 2%, with the exception of the firefighters. They also have 2.5% for each year of their contract. Health insurance, we're continuing to look at. We were initially projecting that to be about $1 million this year out of a $19 million budget. We're soliciting quotes on that now to see if we can do better than what we've been getting through Blue Cross Blue Shield through Maya. We should know that. We should know those rates in probably another 2 weeks or so, 2 to 3 weeks. So we'll look at what those rates show, if there's a savings there, and we'll also look. We're going to look a little more closely at our census. We sent out a survey to employees asking if there are any changes that they know of that are coming down the pike. People that are coming onto the insurance, coming off the insurance, or changing, for instance, from an individual plan to a family plan. So we'll refine that. Our health insurance for the current year is trending very well, and so it leads us to believe that we may be over budgeting there a little bit. So we may have some savings there. We've also had a couple of retirements that can be playing into that, and we have to be cognizant of, all right, somebody retired, but are they going to be replaced with somebody who's likely to be on insurance? So there's some guesswork involved as well, but we'll do the best that we can on that. We're also going to go out to bid again this year on property and casualty insurance and workers' comp insurance. We did that in 2011 and saved ourselves 30%. We don't know that we're going to get that kind of a savings again, but it's worth going. It's worth going out there again. We've also noted some things on the data that we're being insured against, that we may be insuring things that we don't have or people that we don't have. So we're going to refine that, make sure that we're not paying for coverage that we don't get. In the Selectmen's office, if you recall, when Karen's position, the executive assistant position, opened up a couple of years ago, we cut the funding for that from 35 hours a week to 19 hours a week initially. The plan was to fill it at a 19 and then fill with another person at maybe 15 or something like that. Save on the health insurance, diversify a little bit so there's not too much, so that there's a cross-training. Logistically, from the standpoint of getting people that are interested in jobs like that, it becomes difficult to find people that are willing to work for those few hours sometimes, and that have the knowledge and the qualifications to do the job. So initially we were at 19, and then we bumped the position up to 25 about a year and a half ago. We're proposing to go up to 30 hours in the coming year, and it really just reflects the volume of work in the executive office with things like the annual report, which Karen just finished this week, which takes an enormous amount of time from really January until the beginning of April. The annual licensing that we do at the end of the calendar year, the annual appointments that happen at the end of the fiscal year, and then all of the just sort of run-of-the-mill stuff, meeting minutes and things like that. So it's still quite a bit below what we were at 2 years ago. It's substantially below where we were about 8 or 10 years ago when we had several people in that office. So we're doing the best to make it work. We're going to look also at potentially bringing in an intern or two and see if they can help us with some of the project work. That sometimes that works, and sometimes sometimes it doesn't.
If you get a good intern.
What's that?
If you get a good intern, it does.
Yeah, and they're not always easy to find for free. As a parent of a kid who's looking for an internship,
yeah, I'm
looking for him to get a paid one. So.
All the parents look for that.
Yeah. So I mentioned the treasure collector. There's a number of things to talk about there. A number of changes have gone on in the office, sort of triggered by Kathy Rosbach's retirement back in the fall. I talked earlier about the conversion of the position from an elected tax collector to an appointed town collector. That is in place. Department of Revenue has approved that. The legislature has approved that. We've got a good experienced treasurer and a good experienced collector in there now. We talked a little bit earlier about the intermunicipal agreements. We've got a big backlog of tax title property, delinquent taxpayers, better than $600,000 outstanding. And so we're trying to make some progress on that. Kate and Beth Ann have been working on that. And we're actually going to propose some additional funding in the fiscal 14 budget at town meeting to help that along and try to make some significant progress on those delinquencies. I've mentioned staffing to some degree earlier in the evening. I really think now that we were understaffed for the volume of work down there for a lot of years. And I think a lot of it is obviously due to the financial conditions that we were facing. We didn't have the wherewithal really to add staffing, and I think Kathy was trying to do the best that she could with the sort of historic staffing levels. But I think what the changes down there have shown with the new people coming in and some of the ideas that have come up is that we may need to look at staffing down there. So initially we'll be proposing an additional 10 hours a week down there. We haven't decided yet how that could shake out, but we want to build that into the budget if we can, so that we have that available to make sure that we've got adequate coverage. We may not do that right away. Again, there's a lot of moving parts, so it's hard to know everything that we're going to need. The lockbox is another thing that we've already talked about. That may not, that may minimize the need for additional hours down there, but we won't know that right away. And then water collections, I mentioned here as the last bullet item in that section. We talked about that earlier. So we'd like to bring that over, but it's not something that's imminent at this time. We've talked before about MIS, our technology systems here. Sue, you and I have talked about it one-on-one quite a bit. There's been a lot in the news lately about Microsoft's XP operating system and the support going away for that. It's in some quarters it's reminiscent of Y2K. Y2K was such a dud I hope XP is a dud similarly, but the bottom line is, though, we do need to move away from XP. We've had two different assessments of our infrastructure here. Both have said you need to get on a consistent email platform. You can't have multiple platforms, email platforms running. We need proper licensing. We need to invest in hardware in our computers. So Melissa Herman and I are looking at a number of things in that regard. Security, firewalls, things like that, hardware, software, maybe going cloud. So there's a number of things there, but we need to put some money aside for that. So there's additional money in the budget next year for that, and as you'll see as we talk about the town meeting, I'm proposing an additional appropriation for that in the current fiscal year as well, so that we can hit some of that. We're also talking with the police department. They have a completely distinct IT system over there. Our system is not secure enough for what they're running over there. So they divorced themselves of us several years ago. But there's a benefit for us to be on a shared system or to be overlapping.
How much money does this town take in revenue? How much money do we keep track of here?
19 million.
$19 million. Public money. I think it's extremely important that we have systems that are secure in order to ensure the public that we're taking care of things the way that we need to. I am really afraid of not funding that enough. This is not, 1975. It's not 1990. And things change constantly. I mean, at home, anybody that has a computer knows you have to have a reliable security on it.
Right.
To even think that we're not at that stage for the town, for the municipality, is just, it scares me.
Yeah.
It really scares me. We're not doing our job. We're not doing our job if that's the case. So this needs to happen.
Yeah. So we're committed to doing this, and we think that we can make a lot of progress in the next year.
And I need to say something else about that, and that is, I know change is difficult. I know change is difficult.
Sure.
And I know that for the people that have to learn a new system, it's cumbersome at first. Some people get very anxious about learning something new, but as managers, there is no choice. Yeah. There is no choice. Folks have to do that. It's part of the job. Change is part of life, and it certainly needs to be part of a municipal government. Right. So I understand that it's uncomfortable, but we need to do it.
Yeah. Excuse me. On facilities maintenance, we've put some additional funding in there. I put some in anyways. Just the sort of normal upkeep. We've talked in the past about infrastructure. We talk a lot about roads and things like that. Governments typically, historically, do a lousy job of maintaining all of their assets, whether it's vehicles or buildings or roads, whatever it is. So what we're trying to do is keep up with the building maintenance in town. This building was beautifully restored in 1999. We painted it a couple of years ago. We've done some work on the floors. we need to keep up with that. Offices need to be repainted. We're going to need some roof work here. We've had to do some roof work here and there. We need to do some HVAC upgrades and things like that. So we're trying to stay ahead of the curve on that. And the Library Senior Center is 5 years old. We still think of it as having just taken the keys to it.
That new library smell?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure what that smell is, but I'm sure I want to describe it. But we need to, we need to be prepared to start to, to keep up the investment there and keep up what we were given. We've been incorporated for a long time, and we've had the good fortune of being given 2 libraries over the centuries, and haven't had to buy one yet. But we need to make sure that we take care of them. So we did put some money into facilities, and then we had the issue with the gas meter here, and we've put an additional $15,000 in for that, or we'll be putting an additional $15,000 in for that. So, that's something that we're going to need to keep up with over time. Road improvements, I put in here the last 2 road improvements and capital borrowing. They're not operating budget issues per se, but I wanted to talk about them in this because it's all related. I did put an article on, a standalone appropriation article for road funding, road improvements, looking at $150,000 now. That's been the amount that Ed Kukla has requested through capital for the last several years. They haven't been able to fund it through that. We talked a few months ago about funding it through free cash, with a free cash appropriation as a standalone item. So to the extent that we can afford to do it year after year, we will. It's not in the operating budget, so it's, there's a little bit of flexibility there, but it's still a priority. It's still important to us. So, so proposing that. We also talked about the capital plan, and for this coming year, doing something other than just the $200,000 out of the general fund and whatever comes out of ambulance and water receipts and things like that. Doing a borrowing and really knocking off a bunch of projects, a bunch of worthy projects at one time. So we're continuing to work on that, and we'll have something at the next meeting more specific on that. And then finally, there in the final paragraph, there are a couple of things that we didn't fund yet that we hope to be able to as things become clear in the budget. Outgoing Fire Chief Don Klein had requested an additional $9,000 for firefighter turnout gear, about $3,000 a piece. So that would be 3 sets of gear. He wants to do that on a rolling basis so that he's not looking at $200,000 or $300,000 at once. Do it over time, and it gets a little easier to manage. And then I've had some conversations with Ed Kukla about street sweeping. Street sweepers are about $180,000 to $200,000 to replace. They take a beating with all the dust and all the grit flying around there. Their sweeper is about 15 years old, I think, and I think it was used when they got it. It needs $20,000 or $30,000 worth of work right now. So what we'd like to do is to privatize that service rather than use the highway employees to do the sweeping. Bring a service in, knock out the whole town in a few weeks or a month or so. Over time, it's sort of a wash. We estimate that he's getting prices now, but we estimate $15,000 to $20,000 per year to do the whole town. When you think about that and the cost of, say, $200,000 for a street sweeper, you're doing better than break even at 10 years, because in 10 years you'd have to put in probably $25,000 to $50,000 worth of repairs and other things. So we're looking at that. We'd like to do that if we can. And if we think that we can manage it in the 15 budget, we'll also be asking for funding in the, at the Springtown meeting to do a supplemental for 14 so that we can kickstart it this year. So that's the highlight of the budget. The spreadsheet hasn't changed since March 13th. We tend to get into the habit of every time something changes, we update the spreadsheet. And, finally get to May, and we've got 8 or 10 different versions of the spreadsheet floating around. It becomes hard to track it. So I'm going to try to be a little bit more diligent this year and not have too many different versions floating around. So we'll have an update shortly for you, and probably one more after that.
Thank you.
And then the spreadsheet that I've given is just the working spreadsheet. The one that goes to town meeting has a little bit less detail. A lot of the sections are compressed, and you're just voting on expenses and personnel matters. So if there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. I know that there are 2 finance committee members here as well.
Sue?
You know my question. Andy and I have gone back and forth about the town clerk's budget. Because it was,
Where is this?
I'm looking at the spreadsheet. The pages aren't numbered. Page 3.
Okay.
It has been level funded as far as the recommendation goes. If I understand the law correctly, only the town meeting can change the elected officials' budget. And I understand what you're doing. And I don't believe either candidate will have an issue with it. But it sets a precedent if you start not going by the submitted budget of an elected official.
I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, it's at 58,785 now.
Right.
Okay, the salary of the current town clerk.
I did the 2.5%.
You added 2.5% to that, which brings it to 60,256 for this
Correct.
upcoming budget.
Correct.
What we show in the next column is the recommendation of the town administrator.
Correct.
From an overall budget perspective.
But that's the budget section that we vote on at town meeting is the recommended amount.
Right, the town meeting votes on the selectmen's recommended budget. The selectmen are responsible for presenting a budget. What we did last year and what I would expect that we'll do this year, if there's a need, is that we would have the selectmen's recommended and we would have the FinCom recommended.
FinCom's recommended
If it's
as well.
different. If we're all on the same page, then.
Isn't that what we did last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
but
why is this
Well,
different?
the difference here is that what I'm recommending to the board, because the board makes the budget motion.
Yeah.
So the board, and I disagree a little bit with Sue in the interpretation of the law. The salaries of elected officials are set by town meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But the motion that goes to town meeting is the selectmen's.
So
Not for an
Sue
elected
or
official.
anyone else would be able to put an amendment on the floor or to make a motion to
Sure.
increase it by 2.5% to
No.
the 60,000.
Mhm.
No, you cannot increase on town floor. You can go down, but you can't go up.
You can't amend it for an increase? I could
No.
swear we've done that.
No.
People have done that before.
You've gone down. but
Usually
you-
down. There's a
you
question
can't
of
go
what, if it's deemed to be a substantial increase.
Okay, I want to talk about this one, though.
That's fine. That's why I'm here.
You're leaving office.
Correct.
If you were staying in, I could understand you budgeting 2.5%. But there will be a new person in that position.
You're right.
Why would we want to increase that amount?
That's not the point. The point is,
Well, the
it's
point
an elected official's budget. Shouldn't be changed, except by the town floor. That's how I interpret the law. I know Andy does it differently, but that's how I've understood it right along.
And we did it that way last year, or was there no question on anything?
Well, there was no question because the clerk's salary
It
was
up to 1.5.
was consistent with everybody else's. in
And all
terms
the
of
other elected officials' budgets were in line?
Yes.
Well, I'm having trouble just understanding the justification for your asking for that increase.
Well-
It's none of my business, you're an elected official, okay? But the problem is that after town meeting, you're not gonna be that elected official anymore,
That's correct.
okay? So the person that's submitting this increase for the budget that we'll be discussing on May 7th will no longer be holding that office.
That's correct. But it is also the only salaried employee that got changed in this budget.
Because
I am not the only one that is gonna, or this position is not the only one that's gonna have a new person in it. You have a fire chief,
that's being,
and the 2.5% increase is in that.
well, that's being negotiated right now.
Yeah, that's gonna be.
Okay, we just hired the fire chief a few days ago.
But I understand that.
Okay, so that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's what Andy talked about earlier.
Oh,
Andy
sure.
said this is an ongoing thing and we're gonna be modifying this.
And if we come to agreement with the incoming chief for less than what we've got in that budget line, we're gonna change that budget line.
Exactly.
I still believe that only town floor can change that.
You,
It's.
I love a good debate, but I don't know
I
that,
understand.
I don't know the
I don't
benefit
think-
of it.
I don't think,
understand exactly where you're coming from. I do. I just don't want in the future, whoever's up there, to think that they can change an elected official's budget.
I can't say that I would want to put that as a recommended amount from this office. I can't even fathom suggesting that that increase be a recommended amount from the Board of Selectmen.
Well, and perhaps you should get ask town council.
How much does town council charge us every time we ask for an opinion?
Well, it's a good point, because you know, this is it's a wonderful example of the mental masturbation that goes on in so many quarters, where we're discussing something that is so completely ridiculous. We've got a new person, whatever happens on April 28th, we're gonna have a new person in the office.
I know, before town meeting.
Before town meeting. So, you know, to budget the increase where
Well-
there's zero justification,
How about this? How about
and to
this?
spend money on an opinion is
Yeah,
really,
I'm
you know,
not willing to spend money
it's
on
a
a legal
huge,
opinion.
it's a huge waste of taxpayer dollars.
What I would be curious to know is, on the 28th, we'll be electing a new town clerk. When that new town clerk gets sworn in, and the following day, I would imagine, that new town clerk goes in to the office, the new town clerk is gonna look at this budget and say, do I want to ask the town for a 2.5% increase over what the previous town clerk got last year? even though I've only been in this office, in this position for a day, and even if I'll only have been in this office position for maybe a week, and I have to go to town meeting and say why I'm asking for a 2.5% increase over what I wasn't making last year. Somehow I just can't picture that happening. So maybe we should just wait and see what the future town clerk thinks about that as a budget number.
Sue? Oh, do you want to go first?
I will be the town clerk for a week after. The town clerk is still a town clerk for 7 days after the election.
Oh, so it'll be, what, a day?
And town meeting is
Correct.
8 days after the
That's
election.
Okay, so that person will have been in the office for a day. That makes it even more interesting to know what that person would be willing to say on town floor.
Sue. So, other Sue, when I went through, I was going through the whole budget, and I noticed the discrepancy, and I put a little, like, I highlighted it, and then to talk to Andy and ask why, but then, you know, I remembered that it's the office, it's going to be a new elected official.
Correct.
So I just don't, so I never even had to ask him. I just don't understand why you're requesting the 2.5 to begin with. I just don't, that's what I'm having trouble with.
Budget instructions said 2.5% increase. So I put that in there. It's gonna be up to whoever is elected. I agree with you.
Right.
But
You could show a little leadership.
I mean, you could change that, Sue. Logically, okay? Does it make sense to you that a new person is going to have that position and you're putting in 2.5? I understand your direction was 2.5%, but that's, you know, use your judgment within, you know, up to 2.5% is what was suggested. It doesn't mean that you have to put 2.5% increase.
I understand that.
So I'm asking you logically, do you think it makes sense that that be increased by 2.5%?
It's a question of principle, I guess, if you will. As an
In what
elected
sense?
official,
Tell me what your principle is.
I have that right as an elected official to do the budget that way. No one came to me from any board and said, oh, Sue, by the way, we're gonna level fund it. No one said anything to me. If I hadn't gone to the packet online and looked through it, I wouldn't have known that it was done.
Okay, may I
And I'm
ask,
sorry,
may I ask what
communication is important.
what our finance committee
I have no
has said
idea.
about this particular line item, if anything? You
We
have
haven't
not discussed it yet?
No, no.
Thursday night, that's going to be an interesting item. Maybe I'll come to the meeting.
You've been welcome.
That's just, I mean, Sue, you can change that. You can change it if it doesn't make sense.
I'm well aware of that.
Okay. For now, it stays the way that it is. I'm anxious to hear what the finance committee
I'd
says.
like to hear what town council has to say.
I'm not going to spend money on town
You
council
never have.
opinions again.
You never have. Whenever
I
I've
beg
asked.
to differ with you, Sue.
Actually, Sue, that is
I beg
not
to
true, and you
differ.
shouldn't run away at this point.
I beg to differ. We have spent a substantial amount of money just in this last year going to town council because other people think they know how to interpret the law better than people who've been doing the job. Anyway, what's next? Anything else that is going to jump up at us?
When you go through, the majority of the departments are level funded, save for the salary increases, the 2.5% increase. One thing that did come up at the Finance Committee a couple of weeks ago was wages for, or compensation for stipend employees.
Okay.
The stipend employees are not on the pay and classification plan, so we don't automatically factor in a 2.5% or a step or whatever it happens to be for those positions. So it's positions like the animal control officer, the veterans agent, the election workers, registrars, things like that. So those have been level funded. Historically, we haven't increased those at the same rate and at the same pace as the people on the compensation and classification plan, the so-called matrix. So those positions, you'll notice as you look, you'll see the department request in some cases is higher than what the town administrator's recommended is. And that's the explanation behind that. It was talked about at Finance Committee a couple of weeks ago.
Can you give me an example, Andy?
If
you stay on the same page, on the town clerk page, which is, and you go down to Department 01163, registrars.
Yes.
So Sue put in a 2.5% for those people. We backed that down to level fund because no decision's been made on those. The veterans agent, the animal control officer, a couple of others are in a similar situation. It's no slight against them. It's just the way that the compensation plan works. They don't automatically get what everybody else gets.
And that gets decided how?
That would be a decision the board would make between now and town meeting.
Okay. So are we going to talk about that at our next meeting?
Yes, unless you want me to just go ahead and factor that in, or you want to take a position one way or the other.
What did they get last year?
They get 2.5%.
I don't have any problem with 2.5%.
Okay.
Okay, Colin?
Okey doke.
So why don't you just see what that comes out to?
Okay.
Colin, do you have any
I think if
questions?
there's anything else.
No, I went through the budget. There weren't really nothing really jumped out. Everything was explained in the letter.
Oh, the other thing that I meant to allude to, and I touched on it a little bit in the memo, I believe is the North Middlesex assessment. And if you recall, a month or so ago when they certified their budget, they had a sort of back and forth conversation on the school committee of whether to certify with what for us was a $400,000 increase, or try to whittle that down and certify at a lower level. I recommended to them, and they ultimately did certify at the higher level with the understanding that they would try to pare that down, see if they could find some savings. I spoke with Superintendent Landers, I guess it was late last week. She's still working on some things in the budget. She's not sure yet if that's going to move substantially or not. So we'll know that, I expect, in the next couple of weeks. I think they're scheduled to meet either next week or the following week. So we should, we'll hear probably in the next 2 weeks on that. If that happens, then the street sweeping that I talked about, the turnout gear, that probably gets facilitated by the savings that we would have there. We may look at some other things. We're continuing to refine the numbers on the energy for the facilities department in light of this meter issue that we had. So we'll continue to look at that, and there may be some adjustments there if necessary. The other thing I didn't really touch on is that right now, with the additional aid that we got from the joint aid resolution, we do have a balanced budget. We don't have a lot of wiggle room, but we have a balanced budget. So we'd
Does
like
that
to
include Neshoba Tech?
Yes.
even though their increase was,
Their total budget went up 5%.
the total budget, what was our assessment increase? What percentage? Should be at the end, right?
I don't know if I broke down the percentage on our assessment. I can figure it out quickly enough, though.
It's not.
Ours was about a 6% increase, because of the way the formula works. So, you know, obviously that stings. I don't expect any movement on that. I haven't heard anything from the administration there or from our school committee reps that they're looking at any changes to the budget at Neshoba. So we're planning to go forward on.
Be interested to know what the finance committee says about that as well.
Yeah, and what's also going to be interesting, we're kind of in the middle of the town meetings. Westford has been the first of the Neshoba Tech towns to meet. I understand that they approved the budget. And there'll be a couple of other town meetings prior to ours. It tends to be, Neshoba Tech tends to be very contentious year after year in Chelmsford. Chelmsford is the biggest member community, and so it tends to be a hot button issue there. This has certainly been talked about there as well. So we'll have some feedback from at least a couple of other communities before our town meeting.
Okay. All set in the budget?
I think so. We've talked enough about that.
Okay, 3.7, review and discuss annual town meeting and sign town meeting warrant.
You don't have to sign the warrant tonight if there are any changes that the board wants to see. But I threw it on there in case you're comfortable with it. The first three articles are standard articles to appoint officers, hear reports from committees, and appoint the members of the Tucker Fund. Article 4 is a standard article to fund the snow and ice deficit, and as we know, that's not a small number this year. Right now, snow and ice is around $210,000. We're still waiting for a couple of invoices to come in for snow and, for sand and salt. But it looks like it's around 210. We'll have that finalized shortly. Article 5 is another one we see every year. It's a authorization to pay prior year bills.
Do we know what that is yet?
The only one that we have is the unemployment one that I talked about before, and the amount on that is a little over $47,000. Article 6 is an article we threw on to adjust the current year budget. We typically have some additional appropriations, or we move some money from one area to another. We've got a couple this year. We're looking at some transfers in the between the treasurer and the collector. We're going to refine those before Thursday night when we talk to the finance committee. We're also going to appropriate some additional funds for the treasurer That'll be probably $14,000. That's for the tax title work and the tax delinquency issue that the treasurer is dealing with. So that's a kind of a one-time expense to get over the hump on addressing some of those tax title issues. $1,000 for the lockbox service if we do decide to go forward for that. That's just the implementation fees, the setup fees that we would have to pay the bank. That's a one-time cost. Everything else would be in the operating budget. $5,000 for MIS for equipment and software licenses and things like that. Talking about or what we were talking about before. Article 7 is funding for a new multi-purpose scanner, copier, printer up here on this floor. This machine gets a heck of a lot of use. All the packets that we do for town meeting get printed up here, plus all of our normal day-to-day stuff. So this machine still has some life left in it. So we'll keep it, put it down in another area as a suitable backup or for a lighter, an area that doesn't get quite the traffic.
Have we looked into leasing?
We did, and we didn't put a price in because we're not sure yet. We haven't nailed down the best approach for this one, so we'll have something for you at the next meeting on that.
Okay, the only thing to consider in leasing, just based on having worked for a company that leased a lot of those, is that sometimes the turnaround time on coming out to fix it is less than good.
Yeah.
So you might think about that.
Had good luck so far.
Yeah. You know, the other thing is we have, typically when you lease, you get either a certain number per month or a certain number of pages per year. I think mostly it's monthly, right? We have these big months when we have a town meeting or something like that, where we might be doing 5 times our normal volume. So if there's a surcharge for that, that can really work against us.
Okay.
So Articles 8, 9, and 10 are for the police department. The chief wants to replace some defibrillators. 9 and 10 is kind of an either-or. The chief would like to replace the handguns that the police carry, but he would be willing to go with a refurbishment if that is the preference of the board and the town meeting. So it will be either Article 9 or Article 10, but not both. Article 11 is one we put on every year. It's a transfer of money from free cash for fines and fees that the fire department collected. I just found out today they didn't collect any in fiscal 13, so there's no transfer out of that. We had a small amount last year. I want to say last year we had something like $1,200, so it's not typically a big amount. We'll keep it on there as a sort of placeholder for next year, but there won't be any action on that one. Article 12 is to rescind a portion of a debt authorization that we made in 2004. We didn't spend all of the authorized amount, so we're going to pull back on that by $9,500. The road improvement article, Article 13, I talked about earlier, $150,000 is what we're looking at for that. And that, that the board can obviously chime in on that, and if you want to do more than that or less than that, we have some flexibility there.
I think the only thing that you want to be prepared for there is what's $150,000 going to buy you.
Right. And we will be ready for that. Article 14 is an article, a request from the Conservation Commission to replenish their land conservation fund. They spent about $5,000 last year on appraisals and things like that for some land that they were looking at. So they've asked to replenish that back. That will come out of free cash. 15 and 16 are transfers from free cash to stabilization and capital stabilization, respectively. At this point, we don't expect any action on those two. We typically do those in the fall, but we keep them on in the spring in case. Article 17, the table is for reauthorizing revolving funds. It's one that we do every year. 18 is appropriating and transferring from receipts, what we call receipts reserved for appropriation accounts, the ambulance receipts accounts that offset the cost of the department, the cable franchise fees that offset the cost of MIS, things like that. Article 19 is a standard one for funding the assessor's periodic inspections. 20 is our debt service authorization for North Middlesex that we expect to be about $205,000 for the Spalding roof. There may be a small amount of debt service in there for the Hawthorne Brook septic system. I'm waiting to hear on that. We don't know that yet. Article 21 is the operating budget. 22 is the water department operating budget. Article 23 is sort of related to what Sue Funioli was talking about, setting the salaries and compensation of elected officials. Article 24 is the request from the Recreation Department for a restoration of $22,000 in funding for them. Article 25, $71,000 for weekly recycling collections. And we do have a non-binding question on the ballot for that as well. 26 is the fire station project at 11.3 million, same amount that we were looking at back in the fall before that was blocked from reaching the voters at town meeting. 27 is our capital article. That will be, the wording for that will be laid out a little bit differently to talk about where funds are coming from and what's authorized for borrowing. Article 28 is a borrowing authorization for Neshoba Tech for their school roof project. They've gotten approved through the MSBA for a roof repair project, and so they need the authorization from the towns to go forward with borrowing for that.
What's our assessment on that? Projected to be?
I didn't bring it.
That's okay.
I think it's around $200,000, give or take. I have it in the other room, but a couple of bylaw adoptions. One from the town clerk, Article 29, has to do with office hours for certain elected officials. I'm not sure who's going to present that at town meeting. Since she will no longer be the clerk, I don't know if either of the candidates will be care about it or will be prepared to speak to it. So, and then Article 30 is the amendment to the capital planning bylaw, Article 14. And then 31 and 32 may look familiar to you. We had these on last year and ended up taking no action on these. These are two pieces of land that the town owns that the state is interested in buying. So it would be no change in the protected status of the two properties. In fact, the first one, Article 31, on the so-called Clement property, would actually be, the protection level would be increased if the state took it over. It's currently not protected under the Conservation Commission Act. So, and that is it. I don't expect a need to add anything to the warrant. As I mentioned, there are a handful of articles that we probably will not take action on, but we keep them on as a matter of habit.
Okay. Colin, anything?
No, I mean, do you want us to sign it this evening? Or would you like us
Well,
to?
he said that there might be some changes, though.
There could be, we've got 4 weeks. Now, we can hold off.
Okay.
Just in case.
Okay. Alrighty. We did 3-8. 4-1, review request from Fire EMS Captain Michael Grimley to appoint Kathleen Beal, Michael Marchand, and Michael Whittier as on-call firefighter recruits, and to appoint Kevin Penna on an on-call firefighter EMT with terms from April 8th, 2014 to June 30th, 2014.
I move that we approve a request from Fire EMS Captain Michael Grimley to appoint Kathleen Beal, Michael Marchand, and Michael Whittier as on-call firefighter recruits, and to appoint Kevin Pena, an on-call firefighter EMT with terms from April 8th, 2014 to June 30th, 2014.
Second. Questions?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-2, review request from Police Chief Irving Marshall to appoint Jessica Fellows as a full-time telecommunicator contingent on a background check, physical and psychological testing, and with a 6-month probationary period.
I move that we approve a request from Police Chief Irving Marshall to appoint Jessica Fellows as a full-time telecommunicator contingent on a background check, physical and psychological testing, and with a 6-month probationary period.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just as a note on that, Jess works for us now as a part-time telecommunicator, and we'll be moving up into one of the full-time slots.
5-1, Board of Selectmen updates and reports.
I just wanted to say something regarding the loss of the 2 firefighters in Boston recently. I actually happened to be in Boston that night. I saw the fire. I drove right by it on Sturrow Drive. It was a horrible tragedy, and you know, my thoughts and prayers go out to the families of the 2 firefighters who died in that blaze.
Thank you, Colin. I think we all echo those sentiments. Terrible. All of the things they do for us. It's just sad. Okay, 5-2, Town Administrator updates and reports.
I think I've talked about everything.
You certainly have.
I'm going to make something up?
No, that's okay.
Tell you about my weekend?
That's okay. 5-3, review and sign payroll and bills payable warrants.
I make a motion that we sign the payroll and bills payable warrants out of session.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Executive session to discuss strategy in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2.
I move that we enter executive session to discuss strategy in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, and adjourn from executive session.
And that will be a roll call. Mr. McNabb?
Colin McNabb, aye.
Sulicio, aye. Thank you much.
Thank you. Good night, folks.